Alright, screw it. We're gonna have to do it live. So I'll turn my audio down a little bit there. And good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and welcome back to the Aussie Overlaw'd channel, going out across pretty much every platform that I have any sort of affiliation with, simply because I have had to kick myself out of my self-imposed streaming exile because of what seems to be a massive turd that the federal government's just dropped on everybody. Now, to be fair, I haven't read through the entire thing, that's why I'm here. I figured I'd share my thoughts live while we go through it, but the whole thing about the... Oh, I'm sorry, what's the exact wording? Where is it? The Combating Antisemitism, Hate and Extremism Bill of 2026. Now, they say that this seems to have been some sort of knee-jerk reaction, but I completely remember that Michelle Rowland, our Attorney General, was talking about how these laws were already on the books and ready to be pushed out there. What, a year and a half ago? She was on, I think it was Sky News, was talking about it, how they'd already been putting things into place. So we're going to go through the bill. It is 144 pages. I will be skim reading because I don't plan on spending more than, say, an hour and a half on this. A little bit of housekeeping. It is just me and little lady Overlaw'd tonight, so I do have a walkie-talkie here in case she needs me. But obviously, family comes first. So if I have to end the stream abruptly or come back to it or whatever else, I'm giving you fair warning. So, where do we actually stand on this? Well, these were pushed through as what they're touting as a reaction to what happened in Bondi. Now, I've kept my mouth shut about what's happened in Bondi simply because I don't believe I'm the appropriate person to be talking on that. I don't think that anyone would really be happy with anything that I had to say. So I've just been keeping my mouth shut on that. The fact that this was ready to go and is being pushed through with a whole 2 days worth of consultation is a little bit sus in my opinion. So for those of you that don't know, this exposure draft bill dropped sometime today. I think it was around 10 a.m. And, yeah, by the way, submissions for this close at 4 p.m. on Thursday. It is currently 8 p.m. on Tuesday. So we've got less than 48 hours to make your voice known about this. So it's kind of BS in my opinion. But we'll have a quick look at some of the news articles first. Oh, it self-turns off. That's what it was. So apparently I'm going to have to remember to keep turning this damn thing on. Anyway, we'll have a look at some of the news articles, then we'll go and have a deep dive into the bill. Because I've already heard some very concerning things from both sides of the aisle. I now gather that the coalition are sort of splintering on it, saying that they want to have the gun reforms removed out of it, and the federal government seems to be trying to push various things through without any sort of consultation. But I really want to know what all of this about. I really want to know what all of this is actually about. The big issue that I have with this, though, is that I hear they're trying to make some of this effect retroactively. Now, in general, we have a rule against enacting particularly new criminal laws that apply to actions that have taken place in the past. The other thing that has me a little bit concerned is that I'm pretty sure I read that there's a... What was that, sweetheart? What'd you say, sweetheart? Wow, that was quick. Apparently I need to go and retrieve a Band-Aid. Give me a second. Apologies, people. Alright, sorry. Sincere apologies about that, but as I said, family comes first, and there was an ouchie. So, okay. The shit started already. No, all good. Alright, let's have a quick look at what SBS is saying about it. I'm going to jump back and forth between left side and right side news, for obvious reasons, but let's have a quick look. So, SBS has said the 8 key changes in Labour's sweeping hate speech and gun laws. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has called for Parliament to come together and pass an extensive bill changing offences around hate crimes and tightening gun laws. The 144-page draft of the Combating Antisemitism and Hate Speech Bill was released on Tuesday. It proposes to create new offences, increase penalties for existing hate crimes, and introduce additional security checks for people obtaining firearms. Hang on one sec. Shall turn the microphone down a bit. There, is that better? Albanese will need opposition or crossbench support to pass legislation, casting it as a moment for national unity and asking politicians to look for reasons to agree rather than disagree. Some, however, have already expressed reservations. Nationals leader David Littleproud said gun laws and hate speech are complex issues and rolling them into one bill disrespects the Parliament. I am inclined to agree with that. Too soft now. Of course it is. Alright, hopefully that's somewhere in between. If you were serious about bringing the country together, you would have had these two serious and complex policy areas separated. There are also concerns within the opposition about provisions of the hate speech bill, including the passage that exempts directly quoting from or otherwise referencing a religious text for the purpose of religious teaching or discussion. They believe that this may fail to tackle some radical Islamic preachers who would have been able to fall back on that defense. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest, the first thing that comes to mind there is, how quickly can you set up your own religion? Here are the key 8 takeaways. Okay, so it's illegal to promote or incite hatred. Under the proposed legislation, it would be illegal to publicly promote or incite hatred or disseminate ideas of superiority or hatred towards another person or group based on their race, colour, or national or ethnic origin. Someone encouraging hatred towards a community member, making them feel intimidated or fear violence, could be imprisoned for up to 5 years. Okay, I see this going one of two ways. Either it would be a boon for dealing with certain demographics that are causing fear and hatred against everyday Australians, particularly here in Victoria, for example, during machete attacks, or it's going to be used as a sword to stifle legitimate criticism. We won't be able to say shit to no one soon. That is kind of what it feels like this is leaning towards. The bill also states that the racial vilification rule will not apply to an individual referencing a religious text for the purpose of religious teaching or discussion. It's not concerning at all. New offences for extremist preachers and leaders. A religious official or spiritual leader found advocating or threatening violence against groups in their preaching or religious instruction capacity will face up to 12 years imprisonment. The offence aims to crack down on leaders using their authority and influence in society to spread hatred or violent extremist views. Hang on, where are my notes on this? I did start taking notes. Actually, you know what? I'll wait until I start going through the actual act before I start getting into the notes that I've started to take. Major penalties for hate crime offences. Harsher penalties will apply for anyone seeking to spread hate, division, and radicalisation. Now, that seems a little bit out of place for SBS, because it isn't just spreading hate, division, or radicalisation. My understanding is that the wording's causing offence on the basis of that is in there as well. That's too much of that little slippery slope that I keep complaining about, so... Anyone threatening force or violence against persons or a group, as well as their property or a person close to them, will face jail time increased from 5 to 7 years. Aggravated hate crimes will carry a 10-year penalty instead of the 7-year penalty, and threatening or harassing someone through the mail will incur 5 years. Okay. they've dumbed that down, because I'm willing to bet that that is section 80.2 of the criminal code, which is the one that uses postal or telecommunication services. They've specifically said through the mail there. I guarantee that's the one that's going to catch people doing things online. New grounds to refuse or cancel visas. Well, I can't say I'm terribly sad about having certain visas cancelled, but what have they said? The Home Affairs Minister can currently refuse or cancel visas on character grounds. The test will now include individuals who've previously spread hatred or extremism publicly, either online or overseas, have allegedly been involved in hate conduct, appear motivated to commit related offences, or have alleged links to prohibited groups. Right. Person rejected based on these hate-motivated grounds could be permanently barred from future visa applications to enter Australia. Expansion of hate symbol offences and police powers. The trade and public display of Nazi swastikas and the other hate symbols is already illegal under the criminal code. However, the definition of hate symbol has been expanded to include symbols of any prohibited group under the proposed legislation. Damn. Okay, because I'm acutely aware. I saw in the news that the National Socialist Network here in Australia, neo-Nazis, they've already just announced that they are going to completely disband because they genuinely believe that this particular law is aimed directly at them. So that's going to be interesting. I'll be curious to see exactly how this plays out with symbols of other hate-inspiring groups. I mean, are we going to see certain religious symbols banned? Probably not. Are we going to see, oh, I don't know, the hammer and sickle banned? Are we going to see any... There are any number of things. This whole bill is designed to affect the right conservative people primarily, and to stop any negative discussion about Islam. Kind of feels like that way. Now, this one's the new framework to list and criminalise hate groups. A new framework will allow the Home Affairs Minister to prohibit groups found to be engaging in or advocating hate crimes based on race, nationality, or ethnic origin. That one feels very freaking targeted. The Minister will need written advice from ASIO to prohibit the group, and the Attorney General will need to agree to the listing. Once the group is prohibited, it will be a criminal offence to be a member of the group, to participate in its activities, to engage in recruitment or training, or to provide support or financial assistance. Yep. Firearm security checks. Look, I'm not 100% sure why they're trying to cram more gun legislation down our throat. Even after Bondi happened, when I said to Lady Overlaw'd that they're already pushing to put through more restrictions in terms of gun ownership and that sort of thing, she turned to me, like, her head snapped to me and she said, "What? Why the fuck are they doing that? We already have some of the strictest gun laws in the world. That's not going to change a damn thing." And I said to her, "Well, you know, no politician's going to let a good crisis go to waste, unfortunately. Because any form of armed people can resist what's coming further on down the pipeline." Well, where necessary, states and territories will have access to classified intelligence from federal agencies, including ASIO and the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission. Why don't they already? I'm very curious about that. And then they're going to be putting through the buyback. The bill establishes grounds for states and territories to work alongside the Commonwealth to limit the number of firearms during a 2-year buyback period, review licensing requirements, and the use of criminal intelligence in the process. Now, I would say Victoria specifically is a very good case in point as to why it doesn't really matter if there's a prohibition on particular weapons. I mean, look how beneficial the machete ban has been. Between the 1st of January and the 10th, I think there were like 7 attacks committed by certain demographics with machetes, including some poor guy getting stabbed to death. Yeah, the machete ban that Jacinda Allen put through is working so brilliantly. Criminals don't give a fuck about the law. They're going to do shit irrespective. It's only... all that sort of shit affects is law-abiding citizens. That's all it is. Alright. Drew Pavlo. So I saw some things on X very quickly. Emergency threat to speech in Australia. Fresh off the back of new reports this week that Australia could ban X, which, I'm sorry, that's complete and utter bullshit as well. The Australian government now plans to introduce a 5-year prison sentence for amorphous acts of hate speech defined in such broad terms that it might cover even the most basic calls to lower immigration or to deport extremists. Meanwhile, the Australian government has introduced a special carve-out clause in the hate speech legislation to allow extremists to continue preaching hate so long as they can argue that they are directly quoting or referencing the Quran. Damn. So this is a direct effort to establish a 2-tier legal system in Australia. Okay, so that's actually... Okay, so 80.2 BF. Okay, so they've included new things. So what I was talking about before was 80.2 Q... No, not Q. A or C, I think it was. All right, so the Financial Review... Splits emerging within the coalition over the hate speech bill. Coalition has hardened its opposition to key aspects of the government's anti-Semitism, hate and extremism bill, threatening to attempt to split hate speech from gun control provisions, as a leading Jewish group warned the carve-out for religious texts could dilute the law's impact. Albanese has recalled Parliament for a special 2-day sitting next week to rush through the combined package of laws that would impose a 15-year sentence on those who run, fund or join banned hate groups and set up a national gun buyback scheme while tightening weapons import controls and background checks. But an exemption for religious scriptures has emerged as an early potential stumbling block to the speedy passage of the bill, with the coalition and Jewish community leaders on Tuesday raising concerns that this could allow radical preachers to use the passages from the Quran or hadiths to continue to promote hatred of Jews. The inclusion of the gun reform laws in what one opposition source described as Franken Bill, as well as concerns over religious freedoms, are shaping up to be seeds of division within the coalition. I'm unlikely to support the bill because of its impact on freedom of speech and religion, said outspoken Conservative Liberal Senator Andrew Hastie, although he did not expand on the reasons why. One Liberal source who spoke on the condition of anonymity played down national concerns over the gun buyback, suggesting that the bill's infringement on religious freedoms was shaking up to be the real sticking point with the Nationals. Only law-abiding citizens will follow gun laws. Most crimes are not done by law-abiding citizens. Damn straight. Soon criticizing the machete ban will be causing division. At this point, I'm genuinely thinking that... One sec. Okay, sorry, one sec. I have to switch to this one for a second. Yeah, come here, sweetheart. It's okay if you want a hug. I said you could come in if you needed to. Okay? Love you.
Love you.
Alright, you go watch TV, okay? You're a bit thirsty? Well, there's drinks in the fridge. Hey, close the door. It's fine, so long as she doesn't annoy you. Sorry, that's going to probably happen a lot tonight. Where was I? As a farmer, Liberal Party's completely leftist, let alone everyone else. Not disagreeing with you. Are the fires affecting you in any way? I have had to be very careful about where I'm driving. One of the routes that I usually take to work was very close to one of the fire zones, but all in all, not so much. Where are we? Excluding quoting or referencing religious texts for the purpose of religious teachings was one of the 4 main objections raised by the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, which has worked closely with the government on its response to the Bondi massacre that claimed 15 lives. The entire concept of religious exemption for racial hatred is a relic of outdated thinking. None of the world's recognized religions promotes racial hatred knowingly and deliberately, and to the extent that any religion would do so, it would be thoroughly shameful. I feel like there's verses in pretty much every religious text that would in some way, shape or form be classed as... The design of the offence is meant to capture a whole range of circumstances, not any one specific phrase at any point in time, said Michaela Cash, who said Chiggy, prompting the ire of Michaela Cash, who demanded to know why Parliament was being asked to rush through push through a vote on laws lacking clarity. We're being asked to turn legislation around in record time. She also questioned whether a fatwa or a legal ruling on a point of Islamic law would constitute a religious text. That's actually a damn good question. Earlier on Tuesday, Albanese invoked the Old Testament as the rationale behind the exemption for religious texts. Seriously? I encourage you to read the Old Testament and see what's there and see if you outlaw that, what would occur. We need to be careful. We consulted with faith groups, not just with the Jewish community. We want to make sure that there's the broadest possible support for this legislation, citing the need to avoid unintended consequences. If you want to avoid unintended consequences, exactly why would you not, not use incredibly broad and vague terminology? Like I said, I'm already partway through reading the bill. I've already got part of my submission ready to go because the whole, giving less than 48 hours for the public to comment on it is absolute bullshit. Groups including the Australian Christian Lobby have already expressed concern that they would be swept up by the new laws that increase penalties or lower the bar for existing offences that already cover sexuality and gender identity, or that could in future be interpreted by judges to make subjective decisions. The Australian Association of Christian Schools CEO questioned the speed at which the legislation was progressing, urging clarity and reassurance around protections for religious freedom. We support strong action to combat anti-Semitism. At the same time, it is important that faith communities are given the opportunity to engage meaningfully with legislation of this significance. In a sign of further internal political disquiet, the opposition on Tuesday also signalled that it may push to split the complex 500-page bill to separate its hate speech and vilification provisions from gun control aspects that have sparked alarm amongst farmers and rural constituents. In a press conference, Home Affairs spokesperson John O'Duniam confirmed the coalition would consider advocating the firearms and hate speech issues be separated. Well, I probably should be, frankly. Where are we? Nationalist leader David Littleproud, who has consistently argued Australia has an extreme Islamic ideological problem, but not a gun problem, accused the Prime Minister of playing petty university-style politics with legislation, but would not confirm whether the junior coalition partner would block the entire bill ahead of the party room discussions. You're over this bullshit? So am I. I legitimately texted Lady Overlaw'd earlier today and said, so, you know how you said you were going to get your passport ready? When's that happening? Because the more and more I read and hear about this shit, the more concerned I am about just having political discussions on it. The fact that parts of this are going to be made retroactively has me sitting here thinking, oh shit, what have I said in the last 5 years that anyone of a protected class could misconstrue or could make complaints over, or this, that, and the other? Like, it's not hyperbole to say that a lot of this very vague language could be disastrous for people. Can I take you with me? Well, we'll see. Legislation including new vilification laws and powers for Australia's spy boss to recommend the organisation be prescribed as a hate group has been broadly welcomed by security agencies. There's a shocker. Can anyone out there, including those of you from the US, can you imagine any of the three-letter agencies being upset about a piece of legislation giving them broader powers? Like, seriously. The government's release of exposure draft, which aims to curb radicalisation, improve migration powers to refuse or cancel visas, and prevent the import of extremist material and firearms, also reignited calls to expand the scope beyond offences intended to promote or incite hatred because of the race, colour, or national or ethnic origin of the target. Inciting hatred, vilification, and dehumanisation of others in any form, whether racial, religious, or directed towards LGBTIQ+ community or people with disability, was unacceptable, said independent MP Allegra Spender. She's been on she's had her own agenda in relation to hate speech laws for years. She must be very happy with herself right about now. There's no principled reason for allowing hate speech against any group. There's no such thing as hate speech. There is only speech that people find distasteful or that they are offended by. They're fucking words. The Bondi atrocity should be a turning point for our country, and this will be a missed opportunity if the new laws only cover racist hate speech, she said, but added that she would support the legislation in its current form if her amendments were voted down, as the Jewish community's safety is paramount now. Albanese indicated the legislation could be expanded to include broader issues in the future. We have the legislation that's there, we have the process going forward, but we think the focus is very much on the aftermath of December 14th. It is on what was an anti-Semitic terrorist attack. Funny how he can't say the words. On broader issues, what we intend to do is have a process to look at other areas of hate speech. If the legislation is carried by Parliament, that will be referred to a process going forward. Australia's proposed new prohibited groups laws will allow the government to ban organisations for hate crimes that were committed before they were illegal. No hate crime needs to have actually been committed, and no conviction is required. Okay, so that's actually part of the bill, so we'll have a look at that in a second. A hate crime is conduct that would constitute any of the following: an offence under subsection C of Division 80, urging or threatening violence or offences against groups or members of a group, other than section 80.2, 80.2C, or 80.2D, to the extent that the targeted group is distinguished by race or national or ethnic origin. An offence under 82H or 82HA, publicly displaying, prohibiting, and giving Nazi salutes. Okay. Hate crime is also conduct that was engaged in at the time before the provision was referred to in subsection that was before a provision referred to in subsection 1 was commenced, and will constitute an offence against the provision had the provision been in force at the time. A hate crime is also conduct or threat of conduct, whether engaged in or threatened before or after the section commences, that involves or would involve any of the following: causing serious harm to a person, causing serious damage to a person, causing the person's death, endangering a person's life other than the life of the person taking the action, creating serious risk to the health or safety of the section of the public, and that the person engaged in because of the person's belief that a targeted person or persons are distinguished by race. For the purposes of paragraph 3b, it is immaterial whether the target or person were actually distinguished by race or national or ethnic origin, or the targeted person actually was associated with a person or persons distinguished. I'm sorry, what? Are politicians excluded from hate speech laws? If they're standing on the floors of Parliament, they absolutely are. Parliamentary privilege. They can say whatever the fuck they want, as long as they're directing it to the Speaker. Hurty words hurts, just an excuse to wipe out the right, all by design. Certainly feeling like it. What did Craig Kelly have to say? I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a bit of a blowhard, but retrospective legislation must be opposed. Genuine question, mate. Do you think the law is to give the government an opportunity to jail politicians from opposing parties that currently say these truths about migration issues and the lack of social cohesion from segments of our community? Is that a possibility? Craig Kelly, who's a member of Parliament, replies, yes, but it's worse. The proposed legislation is retrospective. It applies to conduct that occurred before its commencement. Therefore, anyone that criticised Albanese's policies of unprecedented mass migration in the past could now be faced being arrested and jailed if the legislation passes. That's a terrifying thought. Not sure if that's strictly accurate, still a terrifying thought. What did Antic have to say? So this is another senator. This is one of our senators this morning. Oh, hang on, the audio is going to be crap. Hang on. I shall fix this. Share screen.
From where I sit, though, it makes...
Why is there no audio?
From where I sit, though, it makes life a lot easier, because rather than voting no to 4 separate bills like I intend to be doing, I'll be...
I don't suppose you guys have audio on that, do you? Because I don't, for some reason. You can hear it? Okay, so as long as you guys can hear it, that's the main thing, I suppose.
From where I sit, though, it makes life a lot easier, because rather than voting no to 4 separate bills like I intend to be doing, I'll be voting no to one block. I have absolutely no intention, regardless of the position adopted by the coalition, frankly, of supporting this bill and all of the hate crime stuff that goes with it. We have enough laws on the books in this country as it is. Firearms owners in this country do not need any more imposts on them. And look, there are. I mean, look, we could go on for an hour about the holes in this legislation and the concerns. It opens up new categories of crimes. It gives the ASIO director the ability to recommend that certain groups be...
All right, I'm just going to have to pause it there. I legitimately can't hear it for some stupid reason, so I'm just going to pause it there for a second. I managed to mess up the audio. It's not recognizing the secondary thing out of my Rodecaster. Otherwise, I'd just be running everything through OBS instead of StreamYard. I don't understand why I can't hear it. Makes no sense whatsoever.
Dictated to be hate crimes groups. Now,
If I reload it.
From where I sit, though,
No, doesn't matter.
it makes
You know
life a
what?
lot
Doesn't matter. Okay, so the Sky News blog, no, Guardian blog, sorry. Federal Parliament will return on Monday, next Monday and Tuesday to deal with the hate speech laws promised by after the Bondi attack. Anthony Albanese says there will be a condolence motion for the 15 people who were killed. Coalition says it is deeply sceptical of the government's decision to tie hate speech reforms. Oh, God. Still getting used to the new mouse as well. There we go. I hate everyone equally, everyone can go suck lemons. I used to think that was the perfect way to get out of jury duty, then I realised, hey, if I hate everyone equally, I can still give them a fair trial. So you know what? No, I hate everyone equally except that guy there. Coalition says it's deeply sceptical of the government's decision to tie hate speech reforms with the gun buyback scheme under a one piece of legislation, which will be introduced next week. PM announced a moment ago that he will bring Parliament back 2 weeks early to introduce the reforms. Opposition leader Susan No Backbone Lay, says she wasn't given the draft bill before Anthony Albanese made the announcement today and will review it carefully. We're deeply sceptical of the Prime Minister's decision to introduce a single bill that will attempt to cover multiple complex and unrelated policy areas. For example, issues of speech are clearly separate from the ownership and management of firearms. Albanese is squarely focused on what he perceives to be his political interest, not the national interest, and that is a political decision aimed at fostering division, not creating unity. Albanese said he would brief the opposition this afternoon and will also speak with the Greens leader after the draft bill was released publicly tomorrow. So that was, what, yesterday? Yeah. All right. Forced social cohesion's never going to work? Nope. I did see this from the Free Speech Union. I will put this in chat if you get the opportunity to. They've just got a 30-second thing so you can submit your own submission. Federal Parliament has been recalled early to consider a 144-page censorship bill as a purported response to the Bondi terrorist attack on the Jewish community. This legislation seeks to mimic the UK provisions where 30 people a day are arrested for social media posts, but with even fewer safeguards. Amongst other things, they include hate speech laws, which were originally conceived by the Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin. Jesus. As Chomsky once said in relation to these types of laws, it is a poor service to the memory of the victims of the Holocaust to adopt a central doctrine of their murderers. This isn't about protecting Jews, it's about censoring legitimate criticism of the government. Submissions to the last-minute committee inquiry are due by 4 p.m. on January 15th, literally Thursday. Today is Tuesday, people. If you want to have your say, you need to get your butts waggling. We provided a submission tool which takes about 60 seconds. You can quickly email this, or to have a bigger impact, edit the individually generated draft and submit a PDF through the official system. Amazing how Liberals can say the right things in media broadcasts but still vote to support the legislation. Yep. John Humphrey says on X, Australia already has hate speech laws, but those are civil laws where there needs to be a specific complaint and the punishment is a forced apology or a fine. This is the famous Section 18C that Abbott promised to remove but then failed. Section 18C of the Discrimination Act at the federal level. This is what I've been bleeding on about. Seriously, if words cause you damage, sue. Show the damage. Show the quantifiable damage to you. It should not be up to society to police somebody. It should not be up to society to decide what someone can and can't say. If someone says a bad word to you and you are physically hurt, if you are so emotionally distraught by what they say, sue them. Prove it in court. It's not like balance of probabilities is particularly difficult. This should never have been a criminal matter. The proposed new laws will make it a criminal offence to incite hatred or share ideas of hatred against people from another race or nation, with a penalty of up to 5 years in jail. The law applies even if nobody has made a complaint, and irrespective of whether or not the speech actually caused hate or fear. This is a dangerous escalation in the war on free speech. Our political and legal class take an expansive and slanted view on what constitutes hate, and these laws will make debates about immigration dangerous and some political opinions illegal. We have 1 week before the proposals become law. Speak up now, tell your family and friends, like and share another posts that are critical to the laws. Contact your local MP. If you're in a political party, reach out to the party leaders and let them know that the anti-speech laws are unacceptable. All right. All right, let's actually get into the bill itself. Apologies to those of you that are expecting dark mode. I can't right now. Like I said, it's 144 pages. I'm going to skim over various bits and pieces simply because I don't have the luxury of reading through it line by line. Combating Antisemitism, Hate and Extremism Bill 2026, a bill for an act to amend the legislation relating to the criminal law, migration, customs, and background checking, and to create a scheme to buy back firearms and for related purposes. Everyday Australians have already been labelled right-wing. Isn't that insane? Okay, so Schedule 1, amendments to legislation relating to the criminal law. And this is where I can go back to my notes. Okay, so Schedule 1. Part 1, aggravated offences for preachers and leaders. A person might commit an subsection 282BA of the Criminal Code, penalty and note, repeal the penalty notice substitute, imprisonment for 10 years. I'm just going to very quickly, because this is going to come up fairly frequently. How the hell is that not coming up? Oh, there we go. Alright. Just going to save the Criminal Code Act there too, because that makes a lot. Okay, so this is in relation to threatening force or violence against groups. A person commits an offence if the person threatens to use force or violence against a group, and the targeted group is distinguished by race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, intersex, status, disability, nationality, nation or ethnic origin, or public opinion. A political opinion, I should say. And a reasonable member of the targeted group would fear that the threat would be carried out, and the threat, if carried out, would threaten the peace, good order, and good government of the Commonwealth. Okay, we'll bring the drink here and I'll open it for you. See, I mean, this is if you're openly, actively making threats against individuals. So you've got imprisonment for 7 years. That's being kicked up to 10 years. And then 2, person commits an offence if the person threatens to use force or violence against the group and the targeted group. Yeah, just come in. Alright, I got the camera off. There you go. Yeah, love you too. Have a drink. How'd it go? Person threatens to use force or violence against a group. I mean, all that really is a beefed up version of assault provisions. Because if you make a threat against someone and they genuinely feel fearful for their safety, that's just standard assault. Okay. In this instance, you're threatening force or violence against a group. The targeted group is distinguished by race, religion, sex, orientation, yada yada yada, and a reasonable person of that group would fear that it would be carried out. So basically, they're upping that from 7 to 10, and then from 5 to 7. Criminal Code penalty 82BB. Threatening force or violence against members of a group or close associates. Commits an offence if the first person threatens to use force or violence against the person, and the first person does so because of the person's beliefs that that person is a member of a group or a close associate of a member of a group. Okay. 2BB, BD. Okay, so these are basically just kicking up the imprisonment. So you got pretty much any time it goes 7 years, it's being up to 10. Anytime it's 5, it's being up to 7. For the purposes of 1B and 2B, it is immaterial whether the targeted person is actually a member of the group or is actually a close association of a member of the group. So yeah, makes next to no difference there whatsoever. Sounds like a communist dream bill. Definitely getting there. Does Australia have a Bill of Rights in the Constitution like the US does? No, we absolutely do not. The closest we have is the implied freedom of political free speech, which frankly, I think this bill is going to step all over. I mean, various states have their own charters of human rights and responsibilities. Victoria has one. But again, all you have to do is include a phrase in a particular piece of legislation to say that it's incompatible with the charter, and the charter is completely irrelevant. No, we have next to no rights and restrictions like that. If this is really enacted retroactively, a bunch of the NSN guys are going to get arrested for fighting back against aggression that came quite potentially. Whoa! I've got to get used to this new mouse. The scrolling thing's ridiculous. It's frictionless, so it just sort of flies. Okay, so where's the bits and pieces that I actually need to worry about? Aggravated offense for religious officials or spiritual leaders. Conduct that is engaged by a person in the capacity as a religious official or spiritual leader or other leader, however described. Other leader, however described. That one's interesting because that's effectively leader of, I don't know, a political group or a book club. If the leader of your book club has some nasty, what's the word I'm looking for here? Nasty beliefs that they're spreading in during book club, that could be an aggravating factor. Please don't meme our Prime Minister, he doesn't like it. Well, I mean, at a certain point, I can't help it. So, person commits an offence if the person commits an offence under subsection and the conduct is engaged in by the person's capacity. Okay, so same thing there. There is no fault element for the physical element of conduct described above or other than the fault elements, however described, if any, for the underlying offence. To avoid doubt, a person does not commit the underlying offence for the purpose of paragraph 1A and 2A if the person has a defence for the underlying offence. Yet no shit. Double jeopardy for an aggravated offence. To avoid doubt, if a person's been acquitted or convicted of underlying offence, the person cannot be convicted of the corresponding aggravated offence for the same conduct. There it is. There it is. This is the one that I was like, oh shit, I knew that it was going to be there. I knew that they were going to use the vague language of it. So, what? Okay. Schedule 1, Part 2. Increase penalty for the use of postal or similar services to menace, harass, or cause offence. Control F. Here we go. 471.12. I feel like I've spoken about this recently. Using a postal or similar service to menace, harass, or cause offence. Person commits an offence if the person uses a postal service or similar service and the person does so in a way, whether or not by method of using content of communication or both, that reasonable persons would regard as being in the circumstances menacing, harassing, or offensive. Where is... I'm sure it was 471.12 that I was talking about a couple of weeks ago. I'm almost positive that it captures telecommunication services using email and online social. For online commentators, cause offence is subjective and could criminalise edgy political opinions, memes, or debates on social issues. Everyday Australians might face harsher penalties for casual online arguments or posts deemed offensive, potentially chilling free expression on platforms like X or YouTube. Yeah, that doesn't seem... you know, no idea what this is. This is a set of legislation that is set to be rammed down the Australian public's throats as of Monday, Tuesday next week. So what do they... Repeal the penalty and substitute 5 years. So they're upping that one. If you cause offence online, it's upping from 2 years to 5 years. I can't remember if I have... No, I don't have the funny things here. I'm going to have to upload it so that I can actually play it later. Sorry, 1 second. Been a while since I've done any of this, so my sincere apologies. Oh, there it is. Media assets. I mean, if I'm going to go to jail, I might as well have some fun with it. Alright, so that's uploading. Application of the criminal code made by this part and apply in relation to conduct engaged in after the commencement of this part. Okay. Aggravated sentencing factor. Okay, so now we're amending the Crimes Act. After 16A2. Alright, open the webpage. Possibly doesn't take that long. Alright. After the paragraph, insert, if the person's conduct constituting the offence was motivated whether wholly or in part by the hatred of another person or group of persons, and that hatred was because of the person's belief that the targeted persons or persons in the targeted group are distinguished by race, national, or ethnic origin, that fact as a reason for aggravating the seriousness of the criminal behaviour to which the... Right. What the hell is going on with Ostley? Okay, sentencing principles. So this is actually this is amending what judges are allowed to take into account when they're sentencing individuals. In determining the sentence to be passed or the order to be made in respect of any person for a federal offence, a court must impose a sentence or make an order that is of the severity appropriate in all the circumstances of the offence. Okay, and we're inserting after A2MA. 2MA. If the person standing in the community was used by the person in the aid of the commission of the offence, that fact as a reason for aggravating seriousness of the criminal behaviour to which the offence relates, and if the person's conduct constituting the offence was motivated either in whole or part. Okay, so they're adding that as a aggravating factor that judges need to take into account when sentencing someone under the Crimes Act. Okay. Does not apply in relation to offences against section without limiting subsection 2MBI. The person's conduct constitutes the offence is motivated by without limiting the subsection. A person's conduct constituting the offence is motivated by hatred if, at the time of the conduct, or immediately before, or immediately after, the person demonstrated or expressed hostility, malice, or ill will in respect of the race, national, or ethnic origin of the target persons or the persons of the targeted group. Right. Interesting. I would not be able to accept crypto tips because the Australian government likes to tax crypto. They treat it very... The Australian Taxation Office does not look kindly on crypto. There's a reason that I haven't dabbled in it. Okay, so main amendments. Insert prohibited hate groups. Prohibited hate groups. The objects of this part... Part 5.3b introduces Division 114A into the Criminal Code, defining prohibited hate groups as organisations advocating hate crimes or racial vilification with offences for membership, directing, recruiting, or supporting such groups, with punishment of up to 10 years of imprisonment. The definitions under this are broad, such as advocating, including indirect promotion, potentially capturing political or activist groups. Online commentators could be persecuted for sharing links, discussing, or supporting material from such groups. Everyday Australians risk association through single meetings or online interactions, affecting freedom of association. The objects of this part are to protect the Australian community against social and economic and psychological and physical harm by prohibiting organisations that engage in, prepare, or plan to engage in, or assist the engagement in advocating in conduct constituting a hate crime. And to give to effect to the Australia's obligations under the following. Oh, so now we're talking about the ICCPR, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, done at New York in December of '66. Fairly confident that you're overlooking rights on free speech that are under the ICCPR. Just saying. They already have laws that cover all of this. They're not enforced properly. Yes, that is. That's the most blatantly stupid thing about this. If the current laws were properly enforced, this wouldn't be an issue. So this leads me to believe that the only reason that this is being done is for ulterior motives, in my own personal opinion. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this is where the AFP minister and the lack of procedural fairness comes in, which, as far as I'm concerned, is just an outright breach of the rule of law. Those are all the definitions. In this part, an organisation advocates engaging in conduct constituting a hate crime if the organisation counsels, promotes, encourages, or urges the engagement in conduct constituting a hate crime. I wonder how they're going to spin that so that certain marches are no longer prohibited, are no longer allowed either. The organisation provides instruction on how to engage in conduct constituting a hate crime, or the organisation praises the engagement in conduct constituting a hate crime, or conduct that would constitute a hate crime if engaged in Australia. In circumstances where there is an unacceptable risk that such praise might have the effect of leading a person to engage in conduct constituting a hate crime. A hate crime is conduct that would constitute any of the following offences: an offence under subsection C of Division 80, urging or threatening violence, or offences against groups or members of groups, other than section 80.2, 80.2C, 80.2D, to the extent that the targeted group within the meaning of the offence is distinguished by race, national, or ethnic origin. An offence under 82H and HA, publicly displaying prohibited symbols and giving Nazi salutes. A hate crime is also conduct that was engaged in at the time before the provision referred to in subsection 1 commenced, so going back retroactively, and would constitute an offence against the provision had the provision been enforced at the time. Wonder how far back this is going to go. Because, I mean, depending on how retroactive this is, there's a whole bunch of people that could theoretically be arrested for, I don't know, the Cronulla riots, for actions during certain protests recently, for quite a few things, actually. A hate crime is also conduct or threat of conduct, whether engaged in or threatened before or after the section commences, that involves or would involve any one or more of the following: a threat to cause serious harm to a person, causing serious damage to property, causing the person's death, endangering a person's life, or other than the life of the person. See, hypothetically speaking, that could be as simple as telling someone to go and get fucked. You know, using more colourful vernacular. But, yeah. Creating a serious risk to the health and safety of a section of the public, and that the person engaged in that belief, because of the person's belief that the targeted person or persons are distinguished by race or national or ethnic origin. Targeted property is associated with a person or persons distinguished by race, national. The purposes of paragraph 3b, it is immaterial whether the targeted person was actually distinguished or part of that race or ethnic origin or nationality. Whether or not the targeted person was actually associated with. Regulations specifying prohibited hate groups. Before the Governor-General makes a prohibited hate group regulation specifying an organisation, the AFP Minister, the Australian Federal Police Minister, must be satisfied on reasonable grounds that the organisation has engaged in, prepared, or planned to engage in, or assisted the engagement in conduct constituting a hate crime, or, oh my God, has advocated, whether or not in Australia, engaging in conduct constituting a hate crime other than an offence under section 82A, B, BC, and BE, being advocacy offences, and specifying the organisation as a prohibited hate group is reasonably necessary to prevent harm of any one or more of the kind referred to in section 114A. I was in two of the marches in Sydney last year, could be arrested for association. Yep. Basically how that boils down from the sounds of it. Hang on, what's the wording? Sorry, just one thing. Associated person distinguished by race, national, or ethnic origin. Okay. Something as simple as fuck the insert ethnicity here would theoretically satisfy the requirements under this as a hate crime. I mean, don't get me wrong. Look, I'm not going to lie. Some of this is very much glass completely empty, not even glass half full. But I always look for the absolute worst case scenario when it comes to this sort of legislation, because as soon as you have a totalitarian regime in place, they're not going to use legislation as it's intended. They're just not. So I always look for absolute worst case scenario in this. And as it is, this doesn't seem to be like this to me isn't even worst case scenario. This is just they're going to be banning groups because they don't like it or because they've said something. Well, that's bullshit. And frankly, as far as I'm concerned, unless an actual crime is committed, then they need to fuck off. AFP minister is not required to observe any requirement. Oh, yeah, here we go. Hey, me warrior. A person does not need to have been convicted of a hate crime in order for the Australian Federal Police Minister to be satisfied that an organisation has engaged in the conduct. I'm sorry, what? A person does not need to have been convicted of a hate crime in order for the AFP Minister to be satisfied an organisation has engaged in the conduct. So the group as a whole can be found guilty of engaging in a particular conduct, even if individual members have not been found guilty of committing any sort of crime. That sounds problematic to me. The Australian Federal Police Minister is not required to observe any requirements of procedural fairness in deciding whether or not the minister is satisfied for the purposes of this section. So basically, if they are looking at you as having committed a hate crime, you have no rights to procedural fairness. They don't have to provide you with a fair hearing. They don't have to provide you with the opportunity to defend yourself. They don't have to investigate. They don't have to do any of that shit. Nope, we think you committed a hate crime, therefore you are guilty of said hate crime, although you haven't actually been convicted of said hate crime. Fuck me. Oh wait, hang on, that's a hate crime against Australian koalas. Director General Security advised to be provided before specifying an organisation as a prohibited hate group. Okay, so that's just shit the Director General has to provide to the AFP Minister. Receipt of advice. May take account of other information. To avoid doubt, the AFP Minister may take into account information in addition to the written advice in determining whether an organisation should be specified as a prohibited hate group. Function taken to be function of organisation. The function of the Director General under this section for the purposes of the Act is taken to be the function of the organisation. Again, no procedural fairness in relation to anything. In this section, politically motivated violence has the meaning given under Section 4 of the ASIO Act. Promotion of communal violence is the meaning given. Also, I feel like this needs to be said, but it goes without saying. I'm in no way advocating for anybody to ever actually engage in any form of violence, politically motivated or not. But the simple fact of the matter is that individuals should be able to self-regulate. And I don't know, if there's dissent amongst the populace, maybe it's not because they're racist. Maybe it's not because they hate particular individuals. Maybe, just maybe, It's because the country's fucked under the current leadership. I'm getting told off for being too loud. Well, you know, you could always come and close the door that you left open when you came back in. Oh, thank you for the rumble rant. Well, you must not have closed it the whole way because Angel came barging in. Where are we? Hang on, that's kick. That's YouTube. Oh, interesting. I have no idea where the rumble chat's gone. Apologies. Oh, there it is. Have to crash for a bit. Good to see you back on rumble. Thank you, Neurodivergent. Appreciate it. Engaging with the Attorney General, leader of the opposition. Before the Governor General makes... Okay, no, that is not on. Being a dad's tough sometimes. Before the Governor General makes a prohibited hate group regulation specifying an organisation, the AFP Minister must obtain the Attorney General's agreement in writing that the organisation being specified the purposes of that definition. Who is the AFP Minister? Sorry, it won't be a second. I'm just very curious as to see who is actually... Federal Police? Current ministerial directions to the AFP Commissioner? No. Okay, you know what? It doesn't matter. This all came about for all the reasons you stated, but none of them were... Yeah. Okay. Including or removing names from prohibited groups. Okay. Delisting a prohibited hate group. Okay, so that's interesting. So that's a piece of that's a section that I guarantee is never going to see the light of day, or that is never going to be used, I should say. Reviews by Parliamentary Joint Committee and Intelligence on Security. Prohibited hate group regulation. Okay. Okay, so here we go. So, if the federal government decides that a particular group is officially a prohibited group, we now have offences relating to those groups. A person commits an offence if that person intentionally directs the activities of an organisation, and the organisation is a prohibited hate group, and that person knows that the organisation is a prohibited hate group, they are automatically up for up to 15 years. I can now understand why a certain group has immediately decided to disband. Because all of a sudden they're facing 15 years in federal prison. Now, I don't agree with any of the stuff that the NSN puts out there. Like, it's just... But this is insane. The fact that you can automatically put somebody in jail for up to 15 years because they're a member of a group espousing things that you don't agree with, which is what it fundamentally boils down to. You can say whatever else you like. That's what it boils down to. The fact that you can put people behind bars for 15 years just for being a leader of said group, that to me is disgusting. Person commits an offence if the person intentionally directs the activities of an organisation. And I mean, look, the NSN's the obvious is the obvious example here right now. But I mean, look at the organisers behind, say, the March for Australia. Look behind the people that are staging rallies to protest to keep Australia Day where it is. If the requirements for being included as a prohibited group are so vague and flexible, which they are. Very specifically, they've said they don't have to have actually engaged in specific content. Oh, sorry, they haven't. They don't have to actually have to engage in specific actions, and there's no procedural fairness to prove that you didn't engage in those actions. So literally, someone can make a complaint against a particular group and say, "Hey, we believe that they did this," and the ministers can turn around and go, "Yeah, okay, we believe you. We're going to put them on this list." And then all of a sudden, the people that are in charge of this particular group are up for 15 years, and anyone that's directing them could be up for 10. That's how ridiculous this is. There is literally no evidentiary burden for that. A person commits an offense if they intentionally direct the activities of the organization and it's prohibited hate group, and the person is reckless as to whether or not the organization is a prohibited hate group. Membership. So just being a member of said group will land you 7 years. Expect them to start going after any group that disagrees with the government, start watching stuff like pro-gun groups protesting the new changes, get lumped in there. Wouldn't be surprised. 15 years for recruiting for a prohibited group, 10 years for intentionally recruiting a person to join, participating in activities and organising. And the first mentioned person is reckless as to whether or not. So, hang on, why does this one get 15 and the second one get 10? Intentionally recruits a person to join and participate in the activities. Intentionally recruits a person to join and participate in the activities. Yeah. Organizations prohibited. Oh, it's the knowledge of the fact that, okay, that's what it is. So one's intentional, the other one's reckless as to whether or not. Training involving a prohibited hate group. I mean, this could catch so many things. I mean, sovereign citizens. Those guys that have their own, like, militia style things. Like, this could be expanded to cover so many things. Like, getting funds to, from, or for a prohibited hate group. So if you raise money for a particular group, you could also get 15 years in jail. That's interesting. If you're reckless as to whether or not, you can get 10. Subsections 1 and 2 do not apply to the person's receipt of funds from the organisation if the person proves to the person a receipt of funds solely for the purpose of the provision of legal representation or for legal advice or for assistance to the organisation to comply with law. Okay, so there's a carve out there for lawyers? What the fuck? Providing support to a hate group. It is not an offence against this decision to do either of the following: to do a thing in accordance with the arrangement or agreement for which the Commonwealth is a party, to perform an official duty or function of the Commonwealth. Okay. Extended geographical... Okay, section 15.2. Hang on. That is the Crimes Act, isn't it? Now I'm curious. God, this is why I hate the federal legislation website. Just give me the Crimes Act under I'll leave it. It's so much easier. Okay, there we go. Was it 15? Okay, 15. 15.2. We're right at the very start of 15. Wait, what? Nope, don't think that's even remotely close. Okay, never mind. That's great, sweetheart. I'll have a look at it as soon as I'm done. She made a perfume for her mother using a flower that we picked up from my office today. This section applies if in the prosecution of offence against subsection of this part, the trier of fact is not satisfied that the defendant is guilty of the offence, but is satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty of an offence against another subsection of the section. The trier of fact may find the defendant not guilty of the prosecuted offence, but guilty of the alternative offence, as long as the defendant has been accorded procedural fairness in relation to the finding of guilt. I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what? So if the prosecutors charge you with the wrong charge, but you were still found to be guilty of a different offence under the Act, you can still be found guilty. Fuck me! So the prosecutors don't even really have to do their job properly. Okay. Right. Okay, Citizenship Act. I'm not too stressed about that sort of shit. So under the Criminal Code Act, they're putting a thing in for prohibited hate groups. Surveillance Devices Act. Oh god, telecommunications interception. Okay, so I'm assuming that they're expanding reasons why you're able to get a warrant for various things. Okay, so racial vilification offences. Part 5 adds section 80.2bf to the Criminal Code, creating an offence for publicly promoting or inciting racial hatred with 5 years imprisonment, where public place explicitly includes social media and online communications. This could be used to target online political commentary on topics like immigration, culture, and race relations if deemed to cause intimidation or fear. For commentators, even hypothetical discussions or critiques could qualify as an offence under this section. Everyday Australians sharing news or opinions online may face risks which will limit robust debate. Publicly promoting or inciting racial hatred. The person commits an offence if the person engages in conduct in a public place and the person engages in the conduct intending to promote or incite hatred of another person or a group of persons because of the race, colour, or national or ethnic origin of the target or the target group, or disseminates ideas of superiority over or hatred of another person or a group of persons because of race, colour, or national or ethnic origin of the target or the group. The conduct would, in all circumstances, cause a reasonable person who is the target or member of the target group to be intimidated, to fear harassment or violence, or to fear for their safety. Listening devices of every church and mosque. Jesus. So, theoretically, this would capture individuals posting memes about certain demographics, shall we say. Like if you, I don't know, would have posts a image of certain individuals dumping trash or taking a shit in the park, for example. This isn't going to end well. Yeah, and I agree. That's probably the anti-immigration marches will be caught by that too. For the purpose of subsection 1, it is immaterial whether the target or members of the target group are actually distinguished by that particular race. So basically, if you say something racist and you get the race wrong, it doesn't matter. Jesus. Okay, and here's the carve-out. Subsection 1 does not apply to conduct that consists only of directly quoting from or otherwise referencing a religious text for the purpose of religious teaching or discussion. There's your carve-out that people are losing their shit over, because that basically means that if you are reading from certain passages of certain religious texts, irrespective of whatever they say about anyone, they so a chance of USA now illegal. Seems like it. Actually, you know what I'm really concerned about? There's something as simple as having a crack at the British now would be banned as well. Review the section. At the end of the 2-year period beginning the day this section commences, the minister must cause a review to be conducted of the section. Must cause copies of any reports of the review that is given to the minister to be tabled to the House of Parliament within 15 sitting days. In this section, engages in conduct in public without limiting when a person engages in public. A person engages in conduct in a public place if they communicate to the public using any form of communication, including speaking, writing, displaying notices, graffiti, playing of recorded material, broadcasting and communicating through social media and other electronic methods. Certainly wouldn't be able to complain about the fraud in the Somalian dispute. Yep. They engage in any conduct, including actions and gestures and wearing or display of clothing, flags, signs, emblems, and insignia that is observable to the public and distributes or disseminates any matter to the public. To avoid doubt, a person may engage in conduct in a public place even if the conduct occurs on private land. There you go. You can't even say shit in the privacy of your own home. How the fuck does that work? You engage in conduct in a public place, but the conduct can occur on private land. What? For the purpose of this section, the expressions race, color, and national or ethnic origin have the same meaning as the Racial Discrimination Act of 1975, which is where it should have stayed. 83.2 of the Criminal Code. Aggravated grooming offences? I'm sorry, what? A person might commit an aggravated offence if the person is a religious, official, or spiritual leader, or the recipient of the advocacy is less than 18 years old. Oh, okay. So that's if you you incite hatred in someone under the age of 18. Public place on private lands, churches, synagogues, mosques. Oh, okay, yeah. Actually, to be fair, I didn't even think about that. See? I'm not infallible, and I fully admit that I can be retarded at times. Oh shit, did I just commit a hate crime against myself again? Oh no, because this is limited to race, ethnicity, and nationality, isn't it? Person might commit. All right, so these are all just aggravating factors if you do something that is, if you're a religious official or spiritual leader, basically. Criminal code penalty, criminal code penalty, criminal code penalty and note. Aggravated offense, advocating violence or property damage to a child. A person, the offender, commits an offense if the offender commits an offense against subsections 2A, 2B, 2C, 2BC, BE, the underlying offense, by advocating for one or more other persons to use force or violence or cause damage. And at the time of the conduct, the offender is at least 18 years old. Hang on, wait, what? At the time of the conduct, the offender is at least 18 years old. Oh, the offender, right. And the offender is reckless as to whether or not at the time of the conduct, at least one of the other persons is less than 18 years old. Because, you know, it's wrong to radicalize kids unless it's part of the curriculum in school. A person, the offender, commits an offence if the offender commits the offence against by advocating for one or more other persons to use force, violence, or cause damage. And at the time of the conduct, the offender is at least 18 years old, and the offender is reckless as to whether or not the other person is under 18. There is no fault element for the physical element other than the fault elements of the underlying offence. Absolute liability applies to paragraphs 1B and 2B. To avoid doubt, a person does not commit an underlying offence for the purposes if they have a defence of the offence. Well, yeah, no shit. Okay. Aggravated offence for using a carriage service, which includes the internet, for violent extremist material. A person commits an offence if the person commits an offence against subsection 4745B, and the person is at least 18 years old, and the conduct constitutes an offence of either involving transmitting, making available, publishing, or distributing, advertising, or promoting material or electronic link to an individual or individuals, or soliciting material or an electronic link from an individual or individuals, and the person is reckless as to whether or not at the time of the conduct, at least one of the individuals is less than 18 years old. Fuck me. Okay, it goes without saying, no one under the age of 18 should ever be on Discord. What determines whether you are a leader? That's actually a really good question. And I assume it's having one or more follower. No, no more sharing like poor taste memes with your kids, that's for sure. Actually, you know what? Just for the sake of it, I'm going to double check what 47445B is. Using a carriage service for violent extremist material. The person commits an offense if the person accesses material or causes material or electronic link that can be used to access material to be transmitted to the person, or transmits, makes available, publishes, distributes, advertises, promotes material, solicits material, does so using a carriage service, and the material is violent extremist material. To avoid doubt, the following are fault elements: the intention for the fault for the conduct of paragraph 1A, recklessness as to the fault. Where is the definition of what violent extremist material is? Hang on, where are we? Oh, no, I didn't want to go that far back. Jesus. View full document. Definitions. Where the hell is it all? Seriously? ATO law is currently unavailable. Great. Alright, so what does the Attorney General's Department say? What is violent extremism material? The term violent extremism material has three characteristics. The material describes, depicts, or provides instruction on engaging in, supporting, or facilitating serious violence. A reasonable person would consider material is intended to advocate a political, religious, or ideological cause, and a reasonable person would consider the material as is intended to assist, encourage, or induce a person to engage in or to do a thing related to you can't intimidate someone, or to join or associate with organizations that are engaging in those acts. An intimidating act is a violent act or threat of violent action done with the intention of intimidating the public or coercing or influencing a government by intimidation. They've already said it. Opposing the voice to Parliament is extremist. Hayden should wait until after ICE and the upcoming nationwide riots come for the two cops walking through. Oh, yeah, well. That's certainly something, that's for sure. I mean, look, for the most part, most of these sections involve you have to be advocating for violence, which the long and the short of it is, yeah, okay, fine. You really shouldn't be out there screaming at the top of your lungs, kill all, insert ethnic diversity, whatever here. It's so far my major issue is with the fact that they can just label a particular group a hate group without any sort of procedural fairness. And the fact that they're rushing this through. Reversing the burden of proof for public interest elements of prohibited symbols offences. Excuse me. Religious, academic, educational, artistry, Subsection 1 does not apply to a person if the reasonable person will consider the conduct mentioned is engaged for the purposes that is religious, academic, educational, artistic, literary, or scientific purpose and not contrary to the public interest, or the conduct mentioned is engaged for the purposes of making a news report or a current affairs report that is in the public interest and is made by a person working in professional journalistic capacity. Fuck you. So you can talk about it, provided you're doing it in a professional journalistic capacity. They can't they control the mainstream media. They can't control social media, so they're doing everything they can to nip it in the bud. And oh yeah, by the way, you have no. There is a burden on you to prove that if you are displaying, say, certain things whilst talking about a news article, you have no defense because you're not a professional journalist. I got a symbol for you right here. So yeah, so part 7 expands prohibited symbols to include those of hate groups, lowers fault elements, reverses the burden of proof for defenses such as academic and journalistic use, and allows police to seize items displaying symbols. Online displays, such as in memes or historical discussions, could in this instance lead to offences. Commentators analysing politics or history might need to prove public interest, shifting the burden onto them. Everyday Australians with tattoos, clothing, or online images risk seizure or prosecution, as we've already seen with a guy that had some, shall we say, World War II memorabilia tattooed on his leg. They chased him, 300 kilometres up the coast in order to arrest him? No, the carve-out for lawyers is specifically if you are representing one of those parties. For everything else, I'm just an everyday citizen. Lowering the fault element for prohibited terrorist organisation symbol offences. Okay. I'm not really caring about how they're going to apply this to, say, terrorist organisations, okay? What I care about is how this is going to be used against the everyday person and the general public. Oh, here we go, amending the reasonable persons test. For the purposes of paragraph 1C, this subsection applies if a reasonable person who is a member of a group of persons distinguished by race would consider that the conduct mentioned in paragraph 1A involves dissemination of ideas of superiority over or hatred of a person who is a member of the targeted group, or members of the targeted group because of their race, colour, national, or ethnic origin of the targeted group, or could incite another person of a group of persons to offend, insult, humiliate, or intimidate a person who is a member of that targeted group or the members of such targeted group. It's the fact that they include offend in there. Oh, not to mention insult. Like, this is why they want to remove anonymity from social media platforms so they can go after people. Pretty much. Purposes of 1C, subsection applies if a reasonable person consider the conduct involves dissemination of ideas of superiority or hatred of another person or member. Okay. So yeah, at this point, there's going to be people going to jail for offending people of a particular ethnic or cultural or national diversity, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Seizing and displaying prohibited items. Okay, seizing things displaying prohibited symbols in public. A police officer may seize a thing in accordance with the section if the thing depicts or contains a prohibited symbol that is displayed in a public place. Police officer may seize the thing for the purpose of preventing the commission or continuation of an offence if the police officer has reasonable suspicion covered by in relation to display. Fuck off. That can be read as if the police have a reasonable suspicion that you have a picture of a particular symbol on your phone that they can seize your phone. Sections 82H and 2HA relate to public display of prohibited Nazi symbols and prohibited organisation symbols. Police may also give a direction under 82K in relation to the display of a prohibited symbol. In seizing the thing, the police officer may use such force or assistance as the police officer considers reasonably necessary, and may seize the thing only when it is actually in a public place, and must not damage the thing unless it is reasonably necessary for the seizure. Person from whom the thing was seized or the owner of the thing may apply if the thing was seized by a police officer and if the thing was seized by a member, however described as the police force, to the police in member for the return of the thing. On application by a person in accordance with subsection 4, the police officer must return the thing to the person unless the officer is satisfied that the thing must be retained to prevent the commission of or continuation of an offence, and retention of the thing is necessary for evidentiary purposes. If no application for the return of the thing is made within 90 days that the thing was seized, a police officer who has custody of the thing may destroy or otherwise dispose of the thing. I'm sorry, what? What? Like, I can understand if, say, it's a poster at a rally or some shit like that. Someone scrawls a swastika on something and the cops go, you know what, we're taking that in for evidentiary purposes or whatever else. Police officer means federal police, member of state and territory police. Migration amendments, here we go. Minister reasonably suspects that it applies to a non-citizen, spreading hatred or extremism. Omit the words "and might." Spreading hatred and extremism. This subsection applies to a non-citizen if both of the following apply. Non-citizen is or has been a member of an organisation. At any time the non-citizen was a member of the organisation was a terrorist organisation. See, I don't have issues with this. If you're a member of a known specified terrorist organisation, you're not going to get a visa. I mean, like, my main concern is for actual legitimate citizens of Australia. So I'm less caring about that. I'm not okay with the fact that they're shoving all this in together. I personally feel like they've included the changes to Migration Act here so that they don't have to deal with other issues surrounding migration. Because if the government had to put forward, say, a piece of legislation that specifically relates to migration, people may insist on amendments to, I don't know, the cap of unreasonable mass immigration, or, you know, a whole heap of other things that the government seems to be trying to avoid talking about. This is not required to determine whether a person's membership or association with an organisation has concluded when making decisions for the purposes. Oh, so you can be a former member of a group and they can still ban you on the basis of a visa. Interesting. There's a character, application provision. Amendments to the Migration Act add visa refusal and cancellation grounds for hate group association, even a single communication. Hate crimes or public statements disseminating racial superiority or hatred, including online anywhere. Online commentary posts could bar people from visas and affect family migration. Everyday Australians with edgy online histories may face travel restrictions. Broad association could impact social media interactions. Yeah, no shit. So that. Okay, Schedule 3, Customs Amendments. Okay, I'm kind of surprised that this one wasn't already a thing. Schedule 3, Part 1 prohibits the import and export of violent extremism material or prohibited symbols, limiting the access to books, media, or symbols for research and discussion. Online commentators may struggle with sourcing material. Everyday Australians importing items such as books and flags risk customs seizures. Did they include gun laws and hate in the same bill? Yep, we're going to get to the gun buyback stuff and the gun restrictions. That's further on down. We're only on page 60 of 144. That's why I'm sort of trying to skim through, because we've already been going for an hour and a half. Fuck me, I've got to try and get her to sleep at some stage. So I'm going to skim over this. Customs Act. Income Tax Assessment Act? How did the Income Tax Act come into this? Oh, because we've reached the fucking firearms stuff. Apparently. Schedule 4, Firearms Amendments. So the amendments establish a mandatory buyback scheme for certain firearms tied to a national program reducing guns in the community. Mandatory buyback. Yeah, okay, that works. Everyday gun owners, including hunters, farmers, sports enthusiasts, must surrender firearms, impacting hobbies, livelihoods, and self-defense. Commentators discussing gun rights could be seen as opposing the anti-Semitism combating, risking vilification. Right. My understanding is yes, Bal, they did. Or at least one of them did. Which means that these laws aren't going to make a fucking difference. Objective of this part is provide for the government of the Commonwealth as the National Government of Australia to implement a national gun buyback scheme in response to the anti-Semitic terrorist attack on Bondi Beach on 14 December 2025. The buyback period begins on 1 January 2026 and ends on 31 December 2027 unless paragraph B applies. Hello? It's already the 13th of January. Compensation paid by the state is qualifying compensation to the extent that the compensation is paid during the buyback period for the state under the compensation scheme set up by the state to support the National Firearms Program and approved by the AFP Minister. There's going to be an overall limit on the amount of money paid for the buyback. Subsection 1 relies on the legislative power that the Parliament has under the Constitution with respect to matters that are peculiarly adapted to government of a nation and cannot otherwise be carried out for the benefit of the nation. They're doing it under the... So basically, they're arguing that the Commonwealth government has the right to and jurisdiction to implement this under the implied nationhood power, the defence power, the corporations power, the territories power, the Commonwealth places power, and the appropriations powers. Right. So they're going to make changes to background checks. Firearms background check of an individual may only take into account one or more of the following: an assessment by ASIO, criminal intelligence assessment. Lovely. Let's check scheme made for the purposes of the paragraph. Make an application for firearms background check by a firearms licensing authority, a law enforcement agency, or national security agency. Information has to be contained in the application for a firearms background check, manner for conducting firearms background check. See, I'm reading through this and I'm going, we already have to have mandatory background checks. This is all information that is supposed to be known when you receive your firearms license. Like, vilification is a slippery slope. We have big bins for guns with a vending machine voucher to get your money. Well, I have no idea how they're planning on doing this. It sounds like it's going to be up to each individual state. Euphemism should be illegal. If you can't say it plainly, you're lying about it. Damn straight. Owning guns is anti-Semitic now? Kind of sounds like it. Background checks. Sorry, I'm skipping over the background check stuff because I don't care. Because like I said, we already have some of the strictest background checks in the world. What could they possibly be bringing in aside from making it look like they're doing more shit? We've got to remember, the people that committed the crime in Bondi were already known to ASIO. So what the fuck is another background check going to do? It's going to ask how the Commonwealth government was intending to enforce its laws without jurisdiction in state law matters. This is true, and Emily makes a very good point here, because our constitution, unlike the US, is very strict as to what the federal government can and can't do. It is... Basically, we have very specific things under Section 51 of the Constitution that the federal government is allowed to actually make legislation on. Taxes, import-export, immigration, all that sort of stuff. It's all listed under Section 51. Pretty much anything that is not listed in those dot points automatically falls as remainder to the states, and it's the states' job to make laws about that. One of the things in Section 51 is that if the states all come together and they refer those powers back to the Commonwealth, then the Commonwealth can just make laws in relation to it. But in this instance, they're doing some legal gymnastics to ensure that they feel that they have the power to make these legislations, to pass this legislation. Now, they only have to have one of those specific powers under Section 51 in order to make the legislation stand up. And in the past, the federal government has used some fairly flimsy interpretations of various powers in order to find that they have the power to do it. And unfortunately, like, the High Court has upheld some of those. No specific examples come to mind at the second, but it can be something as stupid as, in a roundabout way, the price of wheat being linked to the corporation's power because of export by multinational companies. You know, that sort of shit, where you do legal gymnastics to find that the government has the right to do so. So, criminals don't abide by laws? No, they do not. As I said, it's very much a case of all this is going to do is harm law-abiding citizens. That is all we are seeing, is that every new thing that's coming in is only to further restrict the rights of law-abiding citizens. And when I say that, I mean putting the screws to people that were born here as well, in my own personal opinion. Because I just see more and more of this shit. And I fear for the world that my daughter is growing up in. So, so the background checks include ASIO and criminal assessments for firearms licensing, sharing data on criminal intelligence and citizenship. Main reason for concern is invasion of privacy. Checks could deny licenses based on political views or associations that have been deemed extremist. Everyday Australians applying for licenses are facing broader surveillance, and commentators with controversial online presences may be risked denial of a license. Crime Commission amendments, criminal intelligence assessments. Adverse criminal intelligence. So this is basically just giving them extra reasons to deny people gun licenses, which, I mean, to be perfectly honest, it does feel like they're just denying the individuals that legitimately should be allowed to have gun licenses to not, basically. I mean, if at least one of the people that pulled the trigger in December had a valid gun license, then what the fuck was the point? You know? Criminal intelligence assessments. Person to be notified of adverse criminal intelligence assessment. Well, at least they've got to tell you, I suppose. Minister's certificate, effective preliminary advice. Automation of certain things. Oversight and safeguards. View of criminal assessment. Secrecy. A person commits an offence if the person is or has been a member of or an officer of a tribunal or and the person makes record of, disclosure, or otherwise uses information, and the information was obtained by the person by reason of, or in the course of exercising the person's functions, duties, or powers. And the information is or contained or relates to a... Oh, well, that's nice. At least if someone engages in corruption within the circumstances... At least if someone engages in corruption and releases your information when you apply for a gun license, they'll be liable for up to 2 years or 120 penalty units. Which would be what, 14 grand? What's the bet they've put in there that you can't see the evidence they're going to use against you too? Well, no, surprisingly, I think that was actually one of the things that they said in there, is that they have to provide it to you. Hang on, where was it? Person be notified of adverse criminal assessment. If an adverse criminal intelligence assessment in respect of a person is given to a Commonwealth agency, the Commonwealth agency must give written notice of the assessment to the person. So there's still... Oh, hang on, that's just notice. Notice must be given to the person before the end of the period of 14 days. Inform the person of the making of the adverse assessment. Include the statement of grounds for the adverse. Oh, okay. So yeah, so they've still got to at least provide you with the grounds. Seed fan, thank you for the $5. What's wrong with just writing a law saying something to the effect of that if someone reaches a certain level in ASIO's watch list, they get deported? Because that would be too fucking easy, and frankly, that would see a good chunk of Labor's voting base get deported. In my own personal opinion. Oh, look, that's potentially a hate crime. At this point, at this point, I'm speed running. I'm waiting to see whether or not it's going to be YouTube that takes down my channel first, or if it's going to be the feds that arrest me. It's going to be interesting. Contains information concerning the person's right to apply to a tribunal. 7 grounds for the adverse criminal assessment. Okay, so not the specific evidence, but at least the grounds. Grounds. Oh, hang on. Subsection 1 does not apply if the adverse criminal intelligence assessment is given to the Commonwealth Agency in relation to any of the following. A decision about whether or not to issue a firearms license or otherwise relating to the issue of a license, including the relation to conditions, and a decision about whether or not to revoke, vary, or suspend a license. Wait, what the fuck? So when else are you going to be subject to one of these adverse criminal intelligence assessments? Like, what? Despite subsection 3, subsection 1 does apply in circumstances prescribed by the regulation for the purpose of this subsection. Okay, that was just convoluted for the sake of it. Review of adverse secrecy. Apologies to anyone that has epilepsy. Spent convictions. Excuse me. Used in disclosure of spent convictions, information by ASIO and ACC and other intelligence agencies. Okay, so they can include a person's conviction of an offence that is spent, pardoned, or quashed in the or quashed? So they can include a conviction that a court of appeal has set aside and said that it was on the formally setting aside a guilty verdict on the basis of miscarriage of justice, procedural error, or flawed evidence. They can still include that and say, well, no, they still were convicted, but the appellate court decided that to overturn the conviction. And they can use that as a basis to deny you a gun license. Wow. Emily dropping another one, thank you. May also say a law firm has raised over $500,000 to fight the laws being passed in New South Wales. Regardless of state, it's a fight we should all support as a nation. 100% agree on that, and thank you so much for the super chat. Can't wait to see Australia has their own 1776. Oh wait, they just follow the laws. Well, see, that's the irony of it. I mean, if we turn around and say, hey, it's time for 1776 Australia style, that is potentially inciting violence against the government. Which I'm sure they'd spin in some way, shape, or form. What else we got? Consequential amendments. Don't really care about any of that. What else we got? Didn't know I was streaming on both channels. Yeah, I am literally live on every social media platform that I have at the moment. So we are live on YouTube, the main channel, the backup live channel. We are live on X. We are live on Rumble. We are live on Kick. We are live on Twitch for the first time in over a year. Alright. So where is the part banning the Gundam replicas for the toys so they show up with a warrant to seize your Gundams? Screw you, Stingy. Although I tell you what, for those of you that don't know, I have a massive habit of like putting together the models and that sort of thing. And I just learnt there are like 1/48th size ones that are like 2 feet tall. And apparently they're still reasonably rare. And I was like, and I said to Lady Overlord, if I find one, I'm buying it. I don't care how much it is. Sorry, random divergence. My apologies. Changes to the aviation transport safety regulations. Serious crime, application of amendments. Okay, application of amendment to Crimes Act. Amendments made by the application of amendments made by the. Okay, so that's just saying when they come into force and when they actually apply. None of which really makes any sort of difference in the long scheme of things. Been at this for a very long time, playing the long game. Need to get ahead of it, folks, otherwise have no chance. Time to address it for what it is. Abso-fucking-lutely. Boosh, you keep making comments like that and I'm going to ban you for misinformation. Don't care about any of that. These are all just consequential amendments, so I think we're getting close to the end of the actual substantial part of it. Transmission of firearms information, other information. Requires customs to transmit firearms import-export data to the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission. Creates a national database of gun owners. Well, the people pushing for that are going to be happy about that. Everyday importers and exporters will be tracked. Commentators advocating gun rights might need to worry about data misuse. Why does it say omit serious crime and substitute serious and organized crime? Wouldn't just adding another sentence about organized crime suffice? It would, but given that it's got, because I guarantee there's a definition in that particular act. I'm not going to go and look in the specific act because, frankly, I'm getting tired. Honestly, it's a fairly lazy way to update it. I mean, rather than just putting in a bracket that says, in all of these segments, after this word, insert this, they go through and add it and repeal it and remove it, and it just... Honestly, I think it's a way for the legislation drafters to keep themselves employed, if I'm perfectly honest. Public safety tests for firearms and weapons. Fails a public safety test for weapons, meaning... Okay. Public safety. Minister may apply public safety tests for firearms at or before the importation of an article to which Regulation 4F applies. Minister may assess whether the importation of the article possesses a risk to health, safety, or security of the public or segment of the public. So even if you're going to import something that may be perfectly legal, the minister may step in and disallow it anyway. Interesting. They do not have any obligation to consider whether to assess the importation of the article under sub-regulation 1. The minister may at any time require the person importing the article to give the minister any information the minister reasonably requires for the purpose of assessing the importation of the article. I know at least one person that's going to be pissy about this. Rules relating to public safety tests. Sub-regulation 2, the importation of Australia weapon. An item in Part 2 of Schedule 13 is prohibited unless the importation is in accordance with the regulations. Well, we already knew that sort of shit. Public safety tests for weapons. Customs, importation of firearms. It looks like they're going to make it even more difficult to actually import firearms. detachable firearm magazine having a capacity of more than 30 rounds other than a firearm magazine to which 14A, 14B, 15, 16, or 16A applies, whether or not attached to the firearm. Importation must comply with at least one of the following: official purposes test, specified purposes test. Okay, so magazines with more than 30 rounds are pretty well prohibited now from the looks of it. Unless you're in the military or a member of the police or something along those lines. Oh, Australia's been going full mad for a long time, Gabstart. It's just, like I said at the start of this, quite literally, no politician lets a good crisis go to waste. What's importation got to do with hate speech? Not a damn thing. What they've done is they've shoved it all together in an omnibus bill to try and force as much through as they can in one hit. And I can completely see why the Conservative Party is saying, no, we feel like this needs to be split up into two separate bills. This should never have been considered as part of an omnibus bill. This is them trying to sneak as much through that they think that they can't get past Parliament on a regular sitting day under the guise of public safety. That's what this is. They're shoving through as much as they can with as little fanfare and as little scrutiny as possible. There's a reason why the actual submissions and public consultation is less than 48 hours. They don't want people to have the time to sit and go through this and actually work out how this is going to impact on everyday people. Sorry, I got distracted by Gabs saying call me Gabs because that actually makes more sense. Selling 29 round mags. It's not about hate speech, it's about control. That's my own personal opinion on it. Yes, is that because in my own personal opinion, 98% of what's contained in this bill in relation to hate speech was already covered by other laws. So it's either they're pushing through what they can as they can, or what may be worse is it's just entirely a big PR stunt to make them look like they're doing something. I mean, the fact that Albanese backflipped and went and said, oh, we were always planning to hold a royal commission into it. We were just going to be waiting. Yeah, I believe that as much as I believe the use by date on my light milk. Albo put it together because he knows the opposition will reject it and they can make them look bad for rejecting the bill. Look, quite possibly. They'll misuse the new laws only to push digital ID, seems so. Quite possibly, yeah. Excuse me. Alright, so we've got to keep going. So we've got to get to Schedule 4, Part 7, which is the other important part. So Schedule 4, Part 5. Frames and receivers. Oh, hang on. Where's the part about it's now going to be an offense to even access... Oh, no, that is Part 7. Okay. That's the other thing that's going to pretty well blow people's minds because... pun not intended because we're talking about firearms. Division 6, skirmish markers. Oh, fuck off. Now what are they changing in terms of paintball? A low-power device meets the requirements of projectile under the Consumer Toys Protect... as in... Means a firearm that's designed to fire plastic, polymer, or hydrated super-absorbent polymer balls, darts, discs, or other projectiles, and includes goods commonly known as airsoft handguns, airsoft rifles, airsoft shotguns, blasters, gel blasters, or gel ball blasters. Damn it, I'm guessing they're completely banning those now too. I really wanted to play with one of those gel blasters. They look fun. Importation must comply with a police certificate. A firearm accessory that is a silencer, sound moderator, sound suppressor, or other device designed to reduce or capable of reducing the noise of a discharge of a firearm. The importation must comply with at least one of the following. Okay, so you've got to be a cop or you've got to have a specified reason to import a silencer, basically. Gels are fun. I don't doubt it. What about Nerf guns and the foam disc shooters? Sounds like they're going very close to that, if I'm perfectly honest. Oh, there's a ton of tools that function and at times look similar to those toys. Identification purposes for silencers. Speed loaders. Okay, so this is all about importation. Part 6, approved forms of police certificates. Part 7. Here we go. Here we go. Offences relating to the use of a carriage service for firearms or explosives manufacture material. No more watching YouTube videos about people making thermite. Firearms and explosive manufacture material is material that provides instructions on the manufacture or modification of a firearm, firearm accessory, firearm part, firearm magazine, ammunition or component of ammunition, or an explosive or other lethal device, or supports or facilitates the manufacture or modification of a firearm, firearm accessory, firearm part, firearm magazine, ammunition or component of ammunition, or an explosive or other lethal device. I would assume that would encapsulate less lethal or less likely to be lethal, as I call them, like tasers and things like that. To avoid doubt, material may be intended to do a thing covered by paragraph 1A or B, even if the material is also intended or mainly intended to do one or more other things, such as be educational, for example, or, entertaining. I mean, frankly, this would cover certain episodes of Mythbusters. Material is also firearms and explosive manufacture material if it is reasonable to consider the material together with other material, and where all of the materials are taken as a certain item, a single item of the material, it would constitute firearms or explosive manufacture materials under subsection 1. To avoid doubt, material may be firearms or explosive manufacture material, even if it was not possible to use the material to manufacture or modify a functional firearm. Do I need to read that again for anyone? Material may be firearms or explosive manufacture material, even if it would not be possible to use the material to manufacture or modify a firearm or explosive material or lethal device. Huh? The first time I read that, I'm like, hang on. So does that mean watching a fireworks display counts? Well, yes, Boosh, the obvious thing that I'm going to get to, because it's specifically referenced later, is accessing files for 3D printed parts. But I mean, there's already laws that prohibit that as well. No longer enjoy Brendan Herrera or Gun Jesus, pretty much. Wine bottles can be used to manufacture improvised shape charges. The government taught me how to do that. Damn. Using carriage service of firearm or explosive manufacture material, the first person, commits an offense if the first person accesses material or causes material or an electronic link to be used to access material to be transmitted to a first person or another person, or transmits, makes available, publishes, distributes, advertises, promotes, or material or an electronic link to be used to access material, or solicits material. Basically, if you post a CAD file or whatever the hell it is for a 3D printer, I can't remember the name of the file, or you post a link to a video about the manufacturer of guns and weapons and all that sort of stuff. And keep in mind, it could be, I don't know, something is, I mean, theoretically, the wording on this would capture documentaries about guns being made in factories, or, I don't know, improvised items during World War II, or this could theoretically cover any number of things, and it's ridiculous. Hang on, Buglocks. I would love it if you would go and hop into bed, sweetheart. If you get your phone, you can hop in Mummy and Daddy's bed until I'm done. I'm almost done. Okay. Oh, sorry, I hadn't turned it back on yet. Hey, no, you. All right. Hey, close the door. Good girl. Sorry about that. Molds can be used instead of printed parts. I wouldn't know. I'm not going to comment on that, just in case. You can get arrested because you watch an episode of How It's Made. Pretty much. Posting it to the Australian government X account is prohibited. Jason, I am in no way going to advise you as to what you should or shouldn't post at Albo MP. Not commenting. To avoid doubt, for the following are the false elements. Intention is the fault element for the conduct referred to in paragraph 1A. Recklessness, okay. Possessing, controlling firearms or explosive manufacture material obtained or accessed via a carriage service. 5 years in jail if you access the material or you have it stored on a data device or it's held on your computer. Oh, okay. Maybe, just maybe some semblance of common sense will apply to the defenses. Excuse me. The offences don't apply if the person carries on a business in relation to firearms, firearms accessories, firearm parts, firearm magazines, ammunition components, okay, and they perform work for such a business, and the business holds a license and a permit, and the material relates to those firearms, firearms accessories, and the conduct is in connection. So if it's part of your business, you can access material. It does not apply to engaging in conduct in relation to the material if the conduct is necessary for enforcing the laws of the Commonwealth or any part of the country. Conduct was necessary for the monitoring. Basically, they're carving out here that it's not committing a crime if you do it in the course of law enforcement, or if the conduct was necessary for in the assistance of scientific, academic, or historical research, and it was reasonable in the circumstances for the purpose of conducting the scientific, academic, or historical research, or both. Or both. The conduct is in connection with the performance by a public official. That's pretty fucked, honestly. But I get how ridiculous this all sounds, but can you understand why my issue is with the vagueness and the broadness of the wording that's being used? I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not going to prosecute you for going and watching Brandon Herrera or Donut Operator. Oh my god, my voice is not working. Or Donut Operator for, a good shoot. Or watching fucking Branca go over the self-defense for the ice thing that happened in whatchamacallit. Point is, common sense would dictate they're not going to arrest you for that. But the wording and the phrasing is broad enough that if they wanted to, they could. And that's what I campaign against. Because they can make things narrower. They can explain things. They can show that, this is specifically what the intent is. But no, they make it as broad as possible to catch as many people as possible so that it can be abused when it suits them. That's the issue that I have. Can you sponsor a green card asking for a friend? Ammunition equipment. Application of amendments by this part. And we are there. We are at the end. So what was that? Hang on. Let me just do a quick thing here. Sorry again for anyone that's got epilepsy. That's relating to instruments, customs prohibited or regulations. Oh, they'd never abuse the laws that they create? Of course not. Why would they ever abuse anything like that? Customs amendments. Okay. Can I just point out something here? This was billed as the Combating Antisemitism, Hate and Extremism Bill. 84 pages of this bill relates to gun control. I kind of feel like that says it all, don't you? And the law is vague. It is what they say it is when it suits them, like hate speech laws. Exactly. So let's boil this down, shall we? We've had 60-odd pages establishing that hate groups can be established by the AFP Minister and the Attorney General without any due process or procedural fairness. We have people being able to be locked up for up to 15 years for being leaders of said groups. We have hate groups being able to be designated for inciting violence without actually ever having any convictions by any individual members or anything like that. And I mean, really, the only saving grace to any of this is that they couch it in the way of saying, oh, well, as far as we're concerned, there has to be a call to incite violence and things like that. And yet there were a couple of things in there where they said, oh, well, hate speech is still offending somebody. How much attention does the mainstream media give this, or is it just a pat on the back? Well, it's not really that the mainstream media are being able to have any attention to this, because this whole thing is being pushed through in a matter of 2 days. Public consultation started around midday today, and it closes 4 p.m. on Thursday. Less than 48 hours for the public to have any say in this whatsoever. Not that they were going to really care about anything that the public has to say. As bad as it sounds, we're relying on Susan Spineless Lay and the coalition to say, no, this shouldn't be passed. And that is a terrifying thing. It's not anti-Semitism or hate speech. Nope. You're offended by this bill, now what? It's a damn good question. No more anti-immigration marches. It does feel like certain provisions of this bill is designed to stop political marches when it suits them. It really does. Are you Victorian-based and have firearms law experience? I am Victorian-based. I don't have a great deal of firearms law experience aside from my own attempts at trying to get a gun license, and unfortunately, I didn't have a genuine reason. So that's really the only reason I didn't qualify. But you know, there's no license required to own a bow and arrow. Just saying. They will never have control on guns, nor should they. Honestly, I mean, I am very much an individual that says that individual freedoms should be paramount. I'm sorry, but fuck your feelings. If what I say is so bad that it offends you to the point where you have a fucking heart attack or a stroke, sue. It's a civil matter. Your facts don't give a fuck about your hurt fees. Okay? That is the absolute bare bones of it. Are you allowed a boomerang? You know, I don't think so, actually. So. But look, anyway, peeps, having read through that, I'm going to probably do a bit more of a deep dive into that, and I'll put out a proper video. But I got to get the little one to bed. So I really felt like it was necessary to get on top of this one, given that there's such a small opening to have any sort of say on this. So I really wanted to read through it, get my own opinion on it. And frankly, this bill, like I said, it's either a PR stunt or it's them refusing to allow a good crisis to go to waste and trying to shove as much through under the guise of safety. It doesn't seem appropriate. And, you know, it's just further tightening the screws. So... But anyway, I'm going to head out of here. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, please remember to hit the like button. If you're new here, feel free to maybe consider giving a sub. For those of you that are watching on the main channel, keep in mind that sometime over the next 2 weeks, if you're a member on the channel, I will be doing a live pre-record in Discord so that you can join me and give your 2 cents on various things while I'm basically going over articles for videos and reacting to various things. But as always, people, please remember, you are not a piece of shit. You have value and do contribute to society, especially for being here. I have no idea if there's going to be any audio on my outros. I highly doubt it, so give me a second and I might actually upload that to StreamYard so I can do that manually. Oh, while I'm doing that, enjoy this. Noise warning.
And again, on your way out, please do me the favor of hit the like and subscribe button if you're so inclined. It costs nothing. It's absolutely free. And we'll be friends forever. Bye now.
This shit, I'm out. Fuck this shit, I'm out. No thanks. Don't mind me. I'ma just grab my stuff and leave. Excuse me, please. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Nope. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Alright then. I don't know what the fuck just happened, but I don't really care. I'ma get the fuck up out of here. Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Okay, I think it's over. Hi, I know I'm live. Don't stress. I know I usually boom a shit, but I just want to have a bit of a play around and see if I can fix the audio for 5 minutes very quickly. Because, you know, for those of you that may be new around here, I do occasionally do a little bit of an after show, but this one's more of a just mess around. So just give me 2 seconds. Where are we? That's fine there. Why the hell did that audio for Antic not play though? I have no idea. Oh yeah, the audio probably adjusted itself again, sorry. Hopefully that's better. Watch the Joint Select Committee currently taking place in Parliament 6 hours ago. You would have heard Michaela Cash repeatedly question how the exemption could be exploited by Islamic hate preachers. The response from the Attorney General's staff was that it would be left to the courts to decide. Right. Oh, sound. Now, site setting. I don't know. Oh well, doesn't matter. I did see that Nate posted something the other day, but I mean, is he back up and moving around, is he? Anyway. Bring back neighbors. Anyway. Peace out, peeps.